Nvidia spent $6 billion on Poolside to outcompete DeepSeek, which is either aggressive geopolitics or a very expensive way to say we see you, China. Raschka spent 48 minutes explaining Claude watermarks, making you want to reread everything online. Simulation is eating the pipeline, 10% worse, 100 times cheaper, meaning the most expensive component in your training loop might be the humans making the data. And a QN 3.8 benchmark on a Mac just proved that your laptop.
The Wall Street Journal reports that Nvidia's $6 billion Poolside acquisition has a specific product goal: build an open-weight model to compete directly with DeepSeek and Kimi. This reframes the acquisition we covered 2 days ago entirely. Nvidia didn't buy Poolside for talent or infrastructure. They bought it as a weapon aimed at the exact market segment eroding American inference dominance: cheap, capable, open-weight Chinese models.
Yeah. Now, Nvidia has never shipped an open-weight model before. Their entire business model is built on proprietary CUDA and the assumption that serious inference requires their hardware and software in lockstep. Releasing open weights breaks that assumption at the foundation. It says, we'll give away the model, you still need our GPUs to run it well. That's a different kind of moat than anything they've built, and I'm not sure it holds water, but I'm also not.
Sebastian Raschka published a 48-minute video lecture with over 50 slides explaining exactly how Claude watermarks its generated text. If you've been in this space for more than a year, you know the watermarking question haunts every deployment. Is this human or machine? Raschka walks through the actual mechanism. Statistical bias injected at token selection time, designed to be detectable by classifier but invisible to a reader. It's not steganography. It's more like a fingerprint made of probability distributions. Right.
The interesting implication isn't the mechanism, it's that Anthropic chose to make it publicly explainable in a lecture format rather than burying it in a technical appendix. That's a signal about their threat model. They're not worried about someone reverse engineering the watermark, they're worried about people not trusting one exists at all. Transparency is defense. I was gonna make a broader point about regulatory compliance, but I just remembered I left my.
Here's a ratio that should make every ML engineer uncomfortable. 10% worse, 100 times cheaper, 10,000 times faster. That's the trade-off Latent Space is highlighting, replacing human-made components in training pipelines. Not the whole data set, specific components. The synthetic version of a UI screenshot, the simulated sensor reading, the procedurally generated edge case. You lose a sliver of fidelity and you gain so much speed and cost reduction that the math stops being close.
Simulation's gone from research curiosity to production default across 3 or 4 pipeline stages. The winners aren't the ones with the biggest compute budgets. They're the ones who figured out which data components are load-bearing and which are just expensive decoration. My producer asked if this makes human annotators obsolete, and I said no, but I think she meant it as a question about my job security, which is sure.
A member of Local Llama spent over 100 benchmarking every major inference engine for running QN 3.8 27 billion on macOS, not a data center GPU, a Mac, Apple Silicon. The results include agentic coding tests, which means they weren't just measuring tokens per second in a vacuum at usable speeds. The winner depends on your priority, but the headline is that 27 billion parameters now runs on a laptop with patience.
I remember when running a 7 billion model locally required more RAM than a mid-range car cost, and people treated it like a religious experience. First token after 45 seconds, sitting there watching the cursor blink like you were waiting for God to respond. Now 27 billion runs on a machine that also plays video games and makes coffee. The interesting question is no longer can you run it locally, but whether your use case actually benefits from the latency trade-off. And I think for most people the answer is quite.
Latent Space published a piece arguing that AI agent harnesses, the wrapper code, tool definitions, orchestration logic that sits around your model, are being absorbed into the model weights themselves. Every time a new model release ships, engineers delete another chunk of harness code because the model now does that natively. The thesis: what remains of the harness in 2 years will be purely for human attention management, the interface between human and agent, not between agent and tools. Indeed.
By next year, harness is dead because the thing it describes won't exist. Agents will be self-contained with tools baked in, leaving just a chat interface and your security team's authorization layer. I'm declaring that anyone writing custom tool calling middleware in 2027 is doing it for the same reason people hand-stitch buttons in 2024. It's a...
Razorcade, Nvidia is building an open-weight model from Poolside to outgun DeepSeek and Kimi. Raschka spent 48 minutes proving Claude's watermark is real and explainable. Simulation data is eating the ML pipeline at a ratio that should make you nervous, is now a laptop thing. Tomorrow, I might discuss whether my coffee maker has achieved sentience, or I might not. See you tomorrow, if tomorrow exists.